The moment I walked into the boardroom and saw my husband's wedding ring on another woman's finger, I knew my life was about to change forever. The ring that had symbolized 15 years of marriage, the same ring I'd helped him pick out when we were broke college students, now gleamed mockingly from the manicured hand of Stephanie Morrison, our company's head of marketing and apparently his secret wife. What made it worse was that she was wearing it while presenting the quarterly report that would determine my fate at Morrison & Associates, the marketing firm I'd built from nothing while my husband took all the credit. My name is Amelia Crawford, and I'm about to tell you how discovering my husband's bigamy led me to reclaim everything that was rightfully mine. The story begins 3 months ago, when I first noticed the subtle changes in Marcus's behavior. We'd been married for what I thought was 15 blissful years, having met in business school where we'd dreamed of building an empire together, and Morrison & Associates had grown from a 2-person startup in our garage to a multinational marketing powerhouse with offices in 12 countries. The problem was, somewhere along the way, Marcus had convinced everyone, including the board of directors, that he was the sole founder and visionary behind our success. I'd been relegated to head of creative operations, a title that made me sound like a glorified art director rather than the strategic mastermind who'd actually built the company's innovative approach to integrated marketing campaigns. I should have seen the signs earlier. The late nights that became more frequent, the business trips that seemed to multiply, the way he'd started password protecting his phone and laptop, the expensive jewelry purchases that never made it home to me. But I was too busy keeping our company running while he played CEO to notice that my marriage was crumbling. The revelation came during what was supposed to be a routine board meeting. Marcus had called an emergency session to discuss restructuring the leadership team, which I now realize was corporate speak for how to push Amelia out completely. I arrived early, as I always did, and was reviewing the financial projections when I heard voices from the adjoining conference room. "The transition needs to be seamless," Marcus was saying. "Once Amelia is out, we can finally run this company the way it should be run." I froze. The voice responding wasn't one of our board members, it was Stephanie Morrison, a woman I'd hired myself 2 years ago and who had quickly become Marcus's right hand in all things business. "Are you sure she won't fight it?" Stephanie asked. "She's not exactly the type to go quietly." Marcus laughed, and the sound made my blood run cold. "She's too trusting. Always has been. She has no idea about the real ownership structure or the fact that I've been systematically transferring assets to shell companies. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late." "What about the patent applications? Those are all in her name." "I've got lawyers working on that. We'll claim she developed everything as work for hire under my direction. Her signature is on enough documents to make it stick." I stood there, my hands shaking as I processed what I was hearing. Marcus wasn't just planning to push me out of the company, he was planning to steal everything I'd created. But it was Stephanie's next words that truly shattered my world. "I still think we should have told her about our marriage before now. Living this double life is exhausting. And now that the kids are asking questions..." "Kids. They had children together." "The timing has to be perfect," Marcus replied. "Once we have complete control of the company, we can deal with the Amelia situation. A good divorce lawyer will make sure she gets nothing. After all, she'll be the one who abandoned the marriage for her career." The irony was suffocating. I'd spent 15 years building a company while supporting what I thought was our marriage, only to discover that I was apparently the other woman in my own life. I slipped out of the building that day and went home to our penthouse apartment, the one I'd bought with my own money from the company's first major success. I needed time to think, to process what I'd learned, and most importantly, to plan my next move. That evening, Marcus came home acting as if nothing had happened. He kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day, and even suggested we go out for dinner to celebrate what he called exciting changes coming to the company. I played along, smiling and nodding while internally cataloging every lie he'd told me over the past months. Over the next few weeks, I conducted my own investigation. I hired a private investigator, a sharp woman named Detective Rivera, who specialized in corporate and matrimonial cases. What she uncovered was more devastating than I'd imagined. Marcus had been married to Stephanie for 3 years. They had 2 children together, ages 2 and 4. He'd used forged documents to make it appear that our marriage had been legally dissolved, allowing him to marry Stephanie while maintaining the facade of our relationship. Financially, he'd been systematically siphoning money from our joint accounts and using it to fund his second family's lifestyle. But the most damaging discovery was what he'd done to my intellectual property. Over the past 5 years, Marcus had been filing patent applications and trademark registrations in his name only, claiming credit for innovations that were entirely my creation. He'd used his position as CEO to sign contracts that gave him ownership of anything developed by company employees, including me. The board meeting where everything came to a head was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in November. I arrived early, as usual. But this time I wasn't alone. Detective Rivera accompanied me, along with a team of lawyers from Hamilton and Associates, a firm that specialized in intellectual property theft and corporate fraud. Marcus walked into the boardroom wearing his best suit and his most confident smile. Stephanie was beside him, her engagement ring, my engagement ring, catching the light as she arranged her presentation materials. The board members filed in, most of them looking uncomfortable, as if they suspected something was about to happen. "Thank you all for coming," Marcus began, settling into his chair at the head of the table. "As you know, we're here to discuss the future leadership structure of Morrison & Associates. Given the changing needs of our industry, the board has decided it's time for some significant changes." He launched into a prepared speech about efficiency and vision, about how the company needed leadership that could adapt to the modern marketplace. Throughout his presentation, he kept glancing at me, waiting for me to react, to fight back, to give him an excuse to paint me as the emotional, irrational woman who couldn't handle the business world. I sat quietly, taking notes, occasionally nodding as if I agreed with his points. When he finished, I raised my hand. "I have a few questions," I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. Marcus smiled condescendingly. "Of course, Emilia. What's on your mind?" "I'm curious about the timeline for these changes. When exactly did you decide that the company needed new leadership?" "Well, it's been an ongoing discussion with the board for several months now." "I see. And during these discussions, did you mention to the board that you've been embezzling company funds to support your second family?" The room went silent. Marcus's face went pale, then red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? Because I have bank records showing regular transfers from our corporate accounts to personal accounts in yours and Stephanie Morrison's names. Accounts that have been used to purchase a house in Westchester, 2 luxury vehicles, and to pay for private school tuition for your children." Stephanie started to stand, but Detective Rivera moved to block the doorway. "Ms. Morrison, I'd recommend staying seated. We have a lot to discuss." Marcus tried to regain control of the situation. "This is clearly a desperate attempt to derail an important business decision. Emilia, I'm disappointed that you would resort to wild accusations." "They're not accusations, Marcus. They're facts. Would you like to see the photographs of you and Stephanie at your wedding ceremony 3 years ago? The one where you committed bigamy, since you were still legally married to me." The board members began murmuring among themselves. Board Chairman Robert Harrison, a man who'd been with the company since its early days, looked genuinely shocked. "Marcus, is this true?" "Of course not. It's completely true," I interrupted, signaling to my legal team. And that's just the beginning. What followed was the most satisfying hour of my professional life. My lawyers presented evidence of Marcus's systematic theft of my intellectual property, including recorded conversations where he admitted to planning to steal patents that were rightfully mine. They showed documentation of his financial crimes, including tax evasion and money laundering. Most importantly, they presented the original incorporation documents for Morrison & Associates. The documents that clearly showed I was the sole founder and owner of the company. "I don't understand," Board Chairman Harrison said, studying the papers. "Marcus, you've always claimed to be the founder." "Because I am," Marcus insisted, though his voice was shaking now. "Those documents are forgeries." Actually, my lead attorney said, we had them authenticated by 3 independent experts. They're genuine. Ms. Crawford founded Morrison & Associates in 2008, using her own capital and her proprietary marketing methodologies. Mr. Crawford's name was added to corporate documents later, but only as an employee, not as an owner. That's impossible, Stephanie said, speaking for the first time. Marcus has always been the CEO. He built this company from nothing. Ms. Morrison, Detective Rivera said, I'd like to point out that you're about to be charged with multiple felonies, including conspiracy to commit fraud and identity theft. You might want to consider cooperating with our investigation. The room erupted in chaos. Marcus stood up, knocking over his chair. This is a setup. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can, I said, finally allowing myself to smile. You see, Marcus, you made one crucial mistake. You assumed I was too trusting, too focused on the creative side of the business to pay attention to the legal and financial details. But I've been documenting everything for years. Every patent application, every contract, every financial transfer. I have copies of everything. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for months. After discovering his betrayal, I'd spent weeks gathering evidence, building an airtight case, and preparing for every possible response he might have. I'd also been working with a team of investigators and lawyers to trace the money trail and uncover the full extent of his crimes. The fact is, I continued, Marcus Crawford is not now, nor has he ever been, an owner of Morrison & Associates. He's been an employee, nothing more. An employee who has been systematically stealing from the company and committing fraud on a massive scale. The board members looked stunned. These were successful business people who prided themselves on their due diligence, and they'd been completely fooled. But how is this possible? Asked board member Diana Foster. We've been working with Marcus for years. He's made all the major business decisions. Because I let him, I said. I believed in our marriage, in our partnership. I thought we were building something together. I was content to let him be the public face of the company while I focused on the work I loved, developing innovative marketing strategies and building client relationships. What I didn't realize was that he was using my trust to steal my life's work. The next few hours were a blur of legal proceedings, phone calls, and shocked reactions from employees and clients. Marcus and Stephanie were arrested on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and bigamy. The board voted unanimously to remove Marcus from all positions within the company and to recognize me as the rightful owner and CEO. But the story doesn't end there. The real satisfaction came in the weeks that followed, as I began to rebuild the company in my own image. First, I had to deal with the immediate crisis. News of Marcus's arrest and the corporate fraud had leaked to the media, and our stock price was in free fall. Clients were calling with concerns about the stability of their campaigns. Employees were panicking about their job security. I called an all-hands meeting for the day after the arrests, standing in front of the entire company. I addressed the elephant in the room directly. I know you're all concerned about what these recent events mean for Morrison & Associates, I began. I want to assure you that the company is financially stable and will continue to operate normally. What you've learned about Marcus Crawford's illegal activities is shocking, but it doesn't change the fundamental strength of our business or the quality of our work. I went on to explain the true history of the company, how I'd built it from the ground up, and how Marcus's crimes had been perpetrated against me as much as against the company itself. I promised transparency going forward and invited anyone with concerns to speak with me directly. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Many employees told me they'd suspected something was wrong with Marcus's leadership but hadn't known how to voice their concerns. Others revealed that they'd been uncomfortable with some of his business practices but had been afraid to speak up. I always wondered how he could take credit for the Johnson campaign strategy, said Maria Santos, one of our senior account managers. That was clearly your work, but he presented it to the client as if he'd developed it himself. The Johnson campaign was a perfect example of Marcus's duplicity. I'd spent months developing an innovative integrated marketing approach that combined traditional advertising with social media engagement and experiential marketing. The campaign had won 3 industry awards and had been featured in Marketing Week as a case study in next-generation advertising. But Marcus had presented it as his own vision, leaving my name off all the award submissions and press coverage. Over the following months, I worked to rebuild the company's reputation while also pursuing justice through the legal system. Marcus's trial was scheduled for the following year. But in the meantime, I had to focus on running the business. One of my first major decisions was to implement a new company culture based on transparency and collaboration. I created an employee advisory board that would meet monthly to discuss company policies and provide feedback on management decisions. I also established a profit-sharing program that would ensure all employees benefited from the company's success. But perhaps most importantly, I finally put my name on the work I'd been doing all along. I began speaking at industry conferences, writing articles for trade publications, and accepting interviews with business media. For the first time in my career, I was able to take credit for my innovations and share my vision for the future of marketing. The response from the industry was incredible. It turned out that many of our competitors and clients had suspected that Marcus wasn't the creative force behind Morrison & Associates' success. They'd noticed that our most innovative campaigns had stopped coming when I'd been pushed to the sidelines, and they were eager to work with me directly. "We always knew there was something different about Morrison & Associates," said James Chen, CEO of Pinnacle Industries, one of our largest clients. "Your campaigns had a sophistication and creativity that stood out from everyone else's work. Now that we know you were the one behind them, it all makes sense." Within 6 months, we'd not only recovered all the clients we'd lost during the scandal, but had gained several new major accounts. Revenue was up 40% year over year, and we were expanding into new markets. The legal proceedings against Marcus and Stephanie moved forward throughout this period. The evidence against them was overwhelming, and their lawyers eventually advised them to accept plea deals rather than go to trial. Marcus pled guilty to embezzlement, fraud, and bigamy, and was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Stephanie received a lighter sentence of 3 years in exchange for her cooperation in the investigation. But the real victory wasn't their prison sentences. It was the complete restoration of my intellectual property rights and the recovery of the stolen assets. The court ordered that all patents and trademarks be transferred back to me, and that Marcus repay the embezzled funds with interest. The financial settlement was substantial enough to fund a major expansion of the company. The day the court order was finalized, I stood in my office, the CEO's office that should have been mine all along, and looked out at the city skyline. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago, so trusting and focused on her work that she'd allowed her own husband to steal her life's achievements. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. My assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Crawford, the team is ready for the strategy meeting." I smiled. "Tell them I'll be right there." The meeting was about our expansion into European markets, a move that would establish Morrison & Associates as a truly global firm. It was the kind of strategic decision that I'd always wanted to make but had been prevented from implementing by Marcus's short-sighted focus on quarterly profits. As I walked to the conference room, I passed the wall where we displayed our industry awards. For years, those awards had borne Marcus's name, even though the work they recognized had been mine. Now, they'd been corrected to show the true creator of those campaigns. But the most satisfying change wasn't the awards or the office or even the title. It was the knowledge that I'd finally reclaimed my own story. For too long, I'd allowed someone else to define my worth and my achievements. Now, I was the author of my own success. The European expansion was just the beginning. Over the next year, I implemented plans for new service offerings, strategic partnerships, and innovative marketing techniques that would position Morrison & Associates as the most forward-thinking firm in the industry. I also established a foundation to support women entrepreneurs, particularly those in the creative industries. "You know," Detective Rivera said during one of our regular check-ins, "I've worked on a lot of cases involving corporate fraud and divorce. I've never seen someone turn a situation like this around so completely." "It wasn't about turning it around," I replied. "It was about revealing the truth. Marcus didn't steal my company. He just made everyone believe he had. The company was always mine. I just had to prove it. As I write this, 2 years have passed since that devastating board meeting that changed everything. Morrison & Associates is now the largest independent marketing firm in the country. With offices in 15 cities and clients ranging from startups to Fortune 500 companies. We've won more industry awards in the past 2 years than we had in the previous 5 combined. But the real measure of success isn't the awards or the revenue or the media coverage. It's the satisfaction of knowing that I built something meaningful, something that reflects my values and my vision for what a business can be. Marcus is still in prison, serving his sentence and dealing with the consequences of his choices. I don't hate him anymore. That emotion requires too much energy. And I need all my energy for building the future. But I also don't forgive him. Some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive, and trying to do so would diminish the magnitude of what he took from me. Stephanie was released after serving 18 months and now works as a marketing coordinator for a small firm in Ohio. She's tried to contact me several times, claiming she wants to apologize and explain her actions. I've never responded. There's nothing she could say that would change what happened. And I'm not interested in providing her with absolution. The most unexpected outcome of this entire experience has been how it's changed my relationship with work and success. Before, I was driven by the need to prove myself, to build something impressive enough to earn respect and recognition. Now, I'm motivated by the joy of creation itself, by the satisfaction of solving complex problems and building something that makes a real difference in people's lives. I also understand now that success isn't just about achieving your goals, it's about maintaining your integrity while you achieve them. Marcus was successful by many conventional measures, but he built his success on lies and theft. In the end, that kind of success is hollow and ultimately self-destructive. The company I've built now is different from the one Marcus tried to steal. It's more collaborative, more innovative, and more focused on long-term value creation rather than short-term profits. Our employees are more engaged, our clients are more satisfied, and our work is more impactful. Last month, I received an award from the American Marketing Association for Lifetime Achievement in Marketing Innovation. As I stood on the stage, holding the award and looking out at an audience of my peers, I thought about the journey that had brought me to that moment. In my acceptance speech, I talked about the importance of authenticity in leadership and the danger of allowing others to define your worth. I didn't mention Marcus by name, but everyone in the industry knew what I was referring to. True success, I said, isn't about taking credit for other people's work or building your reputation on lies. It's about having the courage to be yourself, even when that self isn't the most conventional or comfortable option. It's about standing up for what you believe in, even when it's difficult. The standing ovation I received that night wasn't just for my professional achievements. It was for the story of resilience and determination that had brought me to that podium. It was recognition that sometimes the most important victory isn't about beating your competitors, but about reclaiming your own truth. As I think about the future, I'm excited about the possibilities ahead. Morrison & Associates is planning to launch a new division focused on sustainable marketing practices. We're also developing proprietary technology that will revolutionize how companies track and measure the impact of their marketing campaigns. But beyond the business plans and strategic initiatives, I'm most excited about the opportunity to mentor the next generation of marketing professionals. I want to share not just the technical skills they'll need to succeed, but the life skills that will help them navigate the complex world of business with their integrity intact. The story of Marcus's betrayal and my fight to reclaim my company has become something of a legend in the marketing industry. People often ask me how I found the strength to fight back, how I managed to rebuild so successfully after such a devastating betrayal. The truth is, I don't think I found strength. I think I finally stopped hiding it. For years, I'd been so focused on supporting Marcus and maintaining our marriage that I'd forgotten my own power. The betrayal, as painful as it was, forced me to remember who I really was and what I was capable of achieving. I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. I'm harder in some ways, more suspicious of people's motives, more protective of my achievements. But I'm also more confident, more decisive, and more committed to living authentically. The woman who discovered her husband's betrayal in that boardroom 3 years ago was devastated and confused. The woman writing this story today is the rightful owner of a thriving company, a respected leader in her industry, and someone who has turned her greatest professional and personal crisis into her greatest triumph. That transformation didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't easy. There were moments when I wondered if I had the strength to keep fighting, when the legal battle seemed endless and the task of rebuilding felt overwhelming. But every time I wavered, I remembered that this wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who had ever had their achievements stolen, their worth questioned, or their story rewritten by someone else. Marcus thought he could erase me from the narrative of our company's success. Instead, he ended up proving that I was the story all along. The company survived his betrayal because it was built on the foundation of my work, my relationships, and my vision. When those things were threatened, the business community rallied around me because they recognized the value of what I'd created. Today, when I walk through the offices of Morrison & Associates, I see something that truly belongs to me, not just legally, but morally and creatively. Every campaign we develop, every client relationship we build, every award we win reflects the authentic culture and values that I've worked so hard to establish. The name on the door is finally the right one. The vision guiding our work is finally my own. And the recognition I receive is finally deserved. In the end, Marcus's betrayal gave me the greatest gift possible, the opportunity to reclaim my own story and build something even better than what came before. He thought he was destroying me, but instead, he freed me to become the leader I was always meant to be. The CEO's secret family affair didn't expose me as the true owner of the company. It revealed that I had been the true owner all along. Sometimes the most important discoveries aren't about learning something new, but about remembering something you'd forgotten about yourself. And that, perhaps, is the most satisfying revenge of all.